Welcome back to the mental space. And today we are here at Optimal Fitness in Dubai, special collaboration. And we're talking about the power of human connection and the impact on our mental and physical health. I am delighted today to be joined on the podcast by two guests. We've got Tony Deeney, who is the fitness manager here at Optimal Fitness, and Dr. Thoraya, kind of funny, who is a clinical psychologist with HRIC. Guys, both welcome to the podcast. Great to have you here today.
It's great to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Now, there's been some research out, and perhaps you've seen this recently, where we had the US Surgeon General come out and say that loneliness is as damaging for our health as tobacco. And they've now declared it a public health crisis. We had Dr. Rangan Chatterjee on this podcast recently, who talked about loneliness being equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes today. So really where I wanted to start with, and I'll start with you if I can, Thoraya, is how important human connection is and what impact it does have on both our physical and our mental health.
Well, essentially, I mean, we are social creatures, right? So we cannot live in isolation. There have been so many research studies of individuals who have tried to live by themselves, either in caves or in different areas around the world, but they haven't been able to succeed because in the end, we kind of go a little bit disillusioned, and we start to look at life in a very strange way. So the fact that we have social connections and a sense of belonging, not just to other individuals, but also to a community. So our identity gets almost somewhat encouraged and flourished. So when we start to look at that sense of who we are, we identify that a little bit by looking at who we are surrounded by and who we connect to. So the idea of experiencing loneliness can be extremely detrimental. And loneliness isn't just when it comes to, let's say, myself with other people, but it's also an internal loneliness that a lot of people are experiencing as well.
I'm not going to keep you lonely over there, Tony, for too much longer, but I just want to stay with you, Thoraya. How does that actually then show up in both our physical health and in our mental health?
Well, actually, it shows up in so many different ways. So we can develop physiological symptoms such as headaches, stomach problems, nausea, dizziness. We can even experience something like gut issues. And obviously, when it comes to anything that we experience physically, it's going to affect us mentally. And anything that we experience mentally will translate in and of itself physically.
We sometimes pretend that they're two different systems. And in fact, they both impact each other.
Right. Definitely. I mean, when people talk about mental health, I always cringe a little bit on the inside because I'm like, there's no such thing, because they're one and the same. Mental and physical health are the exact same thing.
Now, Tony, I think great chance to bring you in here as well, because you are Optimal Fitness. You've been trying to build this sense of community. So you're not just a gym and it's not just about lifting weights. You're trying to be building out that sense of community. Why is that personally so important to you?
I think Thoraya mentioned that sense of identity with a lot of people. Today, everyone with the pressure of social media are trying to identify maybe something they're not. I think a gym environment is a great place for people to come and meet like-minded people who are interested in health and fitness, who sometimes need that sense of belonging. The group classes are a great way to do that, where the people come into the same classes every week. They can identify with the people they train with. They can progress together. They're achieving goals together. It's that sense of achievement that it gives them. Because we're a slightly smaller gym, we're big upon that. We know everyone's first name when they come through the door. We make sure that they're kind of not left up to their own devices. So we like to make them feel like they're valued when they're here. And I think that's important. Sometimes people can get left to do their own thing, and a lot of people like to be individuals, but they also like to be noticed when they come here. But that sense of community, whether it's a big gym or a small gym, is very important for some people, and it does kind of become a sense of how they identify with everyone else around them.
You're clearly a healthy individual, I would imagine, being a fitness manager. Why did you decide, look, this is Mental Health Month, Mental Health Week back in the UK as we're talking. Why did you decide that it was important to lean in to the mental side of health? Why did you decide that community was so important? Is there something personally that you've experienced that's taught you that when we're 20, we just think it's about fitness. It's about looking good. It's about lifting the weights. What taught you, or what showed you that you had to go internal as well?
I think talking personally, there was a stage in my own life going through a divorce. My business kind of faltered coming out the other side of COVID. And I kind of really leaned into the physical aspect in terms of, helping me become less stressed, giving me a sense of purpose, setting small achievable goals that would give me that purpose and take me out of the day-to-day kind of anxiety of life, if you like. And as a personal trainer, I can identify and I can see that with a lot of my clients as well. Sometimes we're not just trainers, but also counselors to a certain degree, even though we may not be qualified. People tend to converse and talk about their own personal issues. But for me, myself, it's a big part of my life. And it really does, help with the times when you might be feeling a little bit down, or you might be feeling that, life is getting too difficult. You always have that backup. You always have that, the gym never lets you down. Do you know what I mean? You come here, you don't think about anything, you sweat, and you can, you can forget about your worries.
Now, Thoreau, and I'm going to call you Dr. T. I've got to call you Dr. T because everyone calls you Dr. T on the radio. I mean, how familiar is actually Tony's story there about that need to go internal and to use exercise to help him deal with things that are not physical issues, but actually, internal issues?
Well, I mean, how much time do you have? Can I talk to you about the biology of it?
You absolutely can.
Well, essentially, everything that he's saying is absolutely accurate, because when we talk about the body, most people forget that we feel from the neck down and we process in our brain. So essentially everything that we go through in our life is felt and stored in the body. So any kind of traumatic experiences, any kind of stress, any kind of difficulties that you go through on a day-to-day basis, your body feels it. And so if you're ignoring your body, you're actually not going to feel any better. So one of the things that we talk about is we educate people about the autonomic nervous system, which is basically the part of the body that is autonomic, right? So it's the part that you don't really get to touch. It's the part that works itself and actually takes care of itself. So the autonomic nervous system is split into three, if you will. So you have the sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, and the enteric nervous system. The enteric nervous system is basically your gut region. So it's everything that you eat. And so what we know about the gut, and that's why we call it the second brain, is because in our gut, we produce 100% of GABA, about 80% of serotonin, and 50% of dopamine. And these are neurotransmitters that are feel-good transmitters, right? So these are the things that help our mental health. Yeah. So our sympathetic nervous system and our parasympathetic nervous system is basically our body's reaction to any kind of stress. So whenever we perceive any type of stress, our sympathetic nervous system kicks in. So that's where your heart rate increases, your breath shortens, your muscles tense. This is our fight or flight. This is where the body is preparing itself to either fight whatever is happening or run away as quick as possible.
Yeah.
So the idea here is when you're working out at the gym, you're actually activating your sympathetic nervous system. So your body's releasing adrenaline and cortisol. But at the gym, you're actually allowing your body to also release whatever adrenaline and cortisol that have been stored in the body from trauma or any kind of chronic stress. So you're allowing your body to go from immobilization stress into a sense of relaxation. And it releases endorphins, and it helps activate later on when you're done with the gym, the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for rest and digest. And so this is the part of the body that's just like, all right, calm down. Everything's good now. You can chill. We're in a good space. And so that play that you have with exercise, where it's like you're increasing your sympathetic and you're allowing everything to release from your body, and then the body just kind of relaxes, it allows your body to build more resilience to dealing with stress as you move forward in life.
I love this. And I love the fact that we're talking about the science of all of this now as well, because it feels like too often, and particularly for guys, we often dismiss mental health as woo-woo. It's something over there. It's a sign of weakness and all that kind of thing. Where actually what you're telling us is they're very scientific things, that we can prove that are happening inside the body.
Right.
And there is that connection between physical and mental and the two of them working together.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you cannot have mental health without physical health, and you can't have physical health without mental health. I mean, have you ever felt nervous that so much so that you're like, I don't really feel like eating because I have like these butterflies in my stomach? That's the enteric nervous system.
Unfortunately, the reverse is true. That's always a problem.
Well, what happens there is that when you feel that sense of like discomfort in your enteric nervous system, that also prevents you from eating, and that preventing you from eating can also affect the way that you feel, and the way that you feel then affects the way that you, like your body is interpreting the enteric nervous system. All of these things are connected. So you really cannot separate physical health and mental health from each other.
So Tony, as a physical trainer, over the years, we used to talk about vitamins, and then we talked about different training regimes, shall we say. How have you adapted, and how's Optimal been working to try and marry those, what were used to be separate disciplines in a way, and bring them into a holistic health in a way that it's all joined up?
Yeah, well, you mentioned the different nervous systems there. Whenever you train, there is a certain what we call mind-muscle connection. I think the longer you train, the longer you exercise, it stops becoming about the aesthetic. It stops becoming about what you look like, and more about how it makes you feel, and getting that connection with your own body and your own mind. I know in my own journey, I would have started, trying to sort of look good in the mirror. As you get older, it's more about, stopping the joints from being sore and being able to get out of bed in the morning. But breathing is a big part of it. I do a little bit of yoga now, and that has a big connection with, just how you can feel, how you can de-escalate stressful situations. But what we're trying to do here is essentially close the loop. We have a great opportunity where we have the holistic approach being, we have a clinic joined to the gym. We have nutritionists that can look after the food side of things. We have the trainers with the physical aspect. And we have all of our clinicians, our therapists that can look after, any injuries you may have as well. Now bringing Dr. T on board, that just closes the loop completely, where we can, for example, if you come to me for the physical aspect, to train the physical aspect, then you come to a counselor or a psychologist or a psychiatrist for the mental aspect, and they both need to be trained. They both need to be, you both need to do the reps, if you like, in both situations. So, you squat for 10 reps, or you go to your therapist for 10 sessions, and they will give you activities to do as well. So we're really big on that here. And I think you can't have one without the other today.
I'm going to stay with you just for a second as well, because Mentl, we've got a men's retreat coming up where we're trying to give a taster session for guys to lean into things like Reiki, sound healing. You talked about yoga. Sometimes as men, we dismiss yoga as again, that woo-woo stuff, but actually it's a hell of a workout. How important is it? Because you work with athletes, yeah? So it feels like sports has known this for a while. I mean, we're talking about the top athletes. They have performance coaches that deal with this as much as they deal with this. How are you trying to get that message across to people that actually this isn't something that's weak or should be stigmatized, but it's actually part of a proper workout?
I don't even think, as I mentioned before, age is a factor there. I've just this morning trained a load of school kids at 17, 18, and they need it just as much as someone who is 70 or 80. The flexibility aspect, how you move, the relationship with your own body, injury prevention, generally just feeling more balanced in all those aspects. So I think it's very important, and it is as important as the gym work. How you recover from that stress. Exercise essentially is just another stress upon the system. How do you effectively recover from that? Is it the food that you put in? Is it the sleep that you get? Is it the flexible hamstrings that stop your lower back hurting after too much exercise? They're kind of you can't kind of have one without the other, I think.
Dr. T, Tony talks about the physical reps and doing the physical reps and the mental reps, the mental health reps. What are those mental health reps? Talk to us about some of the things that the community that's dialing into this podcast can actually do in their own lives to, as well as the sit-ups. What can they do for their mental health?
Actually, interestingly enough, the first 4 things I tell people to do when they come into my office, I say exercise, eat healthy, sleep well, have really good sleep hygiene, and breathing exercises, meditation, anything like that. These are extremely important because if you want to tackle, or if you want to stay away from medication, because a lot of people don't like the idea of medication. So if you want to stay away from medication, if you want to be able to build, you need to start at the foundation. And that foundation is your body. So these are the first 4 things that you need to look at. And then we work on things like cognitive restructuring. We also look at things like visualization. We look at things like emotional regulation. I think that would possibly be the biggest piece for me, emotional regulation.
So I was going to say, like, you've mentioned 3 things there. Just unpack each of those. So emotional regulation, what does that look like?
Okay, so that one's a tough one.
And you've got to tweet your answer as well.
Oh, geez. Okay. So emotional regulation is basically your ability to regulate your emotions in the moment when you're activated. So I need to go back to the biology a bit. Is that all right? Biology.
No, that's fine. The more science, the better, as far as we're concerned.
So our prefrontal cortex, which is this part of the brain right here, this is the part of the brain that is responsible for logic, rational thought, impulse control, and executive functioning. Whereas the amygdala, which is kind of here in the inside, where the limbic system is responsible for our emotions. So when we are what we call activated, our amygdala is kind of like on fire. Okay, so there's a lot of blood that's there, a lot of electrical activity that's there. What we've actually seen in PET scans is that this part of the brain reduces its blood flow and its electrical activity for about 20 minutes when your amygdala is activated. So when people say, I'm a logical thinker when I get really angry or when I'm like freaking out, and say it's not physiologically possible because this part of the brain is actually reducing and functioning.
I'm just going to, because something you said, did you say 20 minutes?
20 minutes.
20 minutes.
20 minutes. So if you're really angry, when we say take a break, take a break because 20 minutes before you can kind of come back online, if you will.
Wow.
So that regulation means allowing your amygdala to kind of calm down. And that's where the breathing exercises come in, grounding techniques come in, activating the vagus nerve, which is the most important nerve in your body. So it connects the brain to all your major organs. So things like drinking cold water, just putting ice on the back of your neck can be very helpful as well.
Right.
Singing, humming, anything like that. So creating vibration, all of these things help with emotional regulation to keep your body a little bit calmer. So then this comes back online and you can think in a more rational manner.
Tony, you shared a bit of your story earlier, and I wondered if I can persuade you to share a little bit more, because what we like to do is also get a sense of people's origin stories, that kind of Marvel superhero origin story. Tell me a little bit more about your story. And also it's interesting because there's been a lot, I've been reading a lot lately about the conversations and mental, we're having this conversation. We want to tackle stigma by having a series of conversations, but often it's the conversation we have with ourselves is really bad. So how have you been working with either yourself or indeed your community here at Optimal Fix to kind of tackle that negative self-image or that conversation you have with yourself? Because I know there have been plenty of times in my life where, I wouldn't call my worst enemy the things I say to myself.
Yeah, it's that negative self-talk that sometimes is becomes habit. Initially, through what I mentioned previously, I started with a counselor, and it was something that I would have never thought that I would have needed, but in actual fact became incredibly useful. Guys, he used to just give me things to do during the week. It might just be think about one word, one positive thing that you can focus on this week. I then started to do some journaling. So started to put my thoughts on paper in black and white, whether they're positive or whether they're negative. And I found that was a real good way to kind of, brain dump and get things onto paper and then maybe close the book and not have to think about them. And I found that very therapeutic. It's actually, writing things in black and white can make them seem a lot less big in your own mind, or a lot less like an issue. I think it's a combination of all those things together. I was kind of looking for, as guys, we're supposed to be stoic, and I was actually reading a book on stoicism, and I thought, well, that's okay, it's all well and good, but it's in practice, it can be very difficult. We are emotional people, and some of us react emotionally to situations much more so. And what you had mentioned there previously about bringing that down and using breathing techniques and oftentimes even by using the wrong language can make you react strongly or badly to certain situations. And even, you know, whenever you exercise and train and recovering from very stressful workouts can be similar. It's a similar mindset. It's like, okay, I can get through this. I can recover. I can use my breathing. I will be okay. And it's similar in kind of both endeavors, I think.
Are you more positive with yourself these days?
Yeah, I am. I would say I am. I'm trying to move away from social media as much as possible. I think that has a big negative effect, especially first thing in the morning. If you're looking at, you know, what you don't have or what you think you are not.
Yeah.
Then
I mean, that's interesting in Dubai as well, because there's so much opportunity and it's an amazing place.
Yeah.
But then also social media, kicks that comparison in.
Right.
I mean, as Tony's talking, I can just see you nodding your head in agreement over. So give me your view on what Tony's saying or what you're seeing, similar stories in the community to Tony's, you know, and mine about that self-talk.
Well, I think journaling is phenomenal. It's a really great way of kind of restructuring. And that's what, when I had mentioned cognitive restructuring, journaling is great for that. But it's also a way for your brain to stop the cycle, that just loop of over and over and over again. When you write things down, you allow your brain to just kind of relax a bit.
Yeah.
And, you know, so yeah, the journaling is great, but any kind of comparisons that you're used to giving yourself and pressure that you put on yourself. I mean, these are the types of things that you really want to stay away from. And people are always so worried about missing out on knowing things and seeing things. And so they're like, oh, I have to see what's on. But that proper hygiene of avoiding social media when it's not good for you is really important, because it gives you an opportunity to take care of yourself, which is necessary. And we tend to forget that we matter. Sometimes we keep thinking of everybody else and all the things that we have to do and we need to do. We forget that actually our body is a machine that we need to also take care of.
So you were then saying, okay, social media, look after ourselves. We matter. Now, it's interesting you say that we matter. I've been trying to get better at showing up for myself. And it seems that sometimes you talk about all the people that, you know, are in our lives, and we will show up for them, whether it's our family or whether it's our colleagues or whether it's people we don't know. We'll put meetings into our diaries to make sure that we don't let other people down. How do you encourage people, you know, in practical terms, to actually show up for themselves?
Well, I say start small. So usually people get really worried about showing up for themselves because they're like, okay, I have to schedule it, or I have to do an hour a day or an hour and a half a day. And I say, no, 5 minutes. 5 minutes in the morning, wake up. Instead of hitting the ground running, just wake up, do some breathing, meditate, ground yourself, remind yourself where you are, give yourself that space to just check in with yourself and see what's happening internally. So 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes at night is all you really need to start with. And then you kind of build on that.
You also, I'm going to not challenge something you said, but you said those times when social media isn't good for us. When is social media good for us?
So it does help us connect to other people. And then sometimes it can inspire us to do certain things. It's whenever you bring in a comparative factor, that's where social media can be very detrimental for our mental health, at least. And I would say essentially our physical health. But when we're comparing ourselves to other people, what they're doing, what they have, what we don't have, that's where it becomes detrimental. But it can have its benefits when we're looking at it for what it is rather than what we need to be. And like we're lacking in something.
That's kind of a difficult one, though, aren't we? Because the odds are kind of stacked against us because we've got this algorithm that's being created by not evil geniuses, but very, very, very smart people who are designed to keep us addictive. So it's difficult for us to kind of delineate between, am I using it or is it using me? Tony, I want to come back to you as well, because Dr. T there is talking about, you know, starting with 5 minutes or starting with 10 minutes. When you build programs for people here at Optimal Fitness, how do you, you know, kind of prepare them for this journey that they're going to go on? And is it step by step? It's not just go and beast it an hour every week. How do you build people up?
I think that's why the consultation process is so important, and spending time getting to know your client first and foremost. Not just for if someone comes and says to me, I want to lose 10 kg. I want to find out why. I want to find out what the barriers to success are going to be, their lifestyle habits, their history, any injuries that they might have had. So it's not just a case of writing a program of exercise, it's everything else that comes with that. Also their motivation. We'll talk about maybe their self-image or how they perceive themselves sometimes as well. The longer you're with a client, the closer you get and the more they tend to open up to you. That's an important factor. You have to get people working alongside you. I'm not just going to stand and shout at you until you throw up. It's everything over and above the gym work. Yeah, I think is really important. And if anything, the gym work is maybe only 25-30% of it. Diarizing your food, being more prepared, being more conscientious about what you eat. Sleep hygiene is a big one. Managing stress levels, again, because exercise essentially, like I said, is another stress upon the system. And a lot of people already maybe have a family that they're supporting and a stressful job and a long commute. And then they come in and see me at night to train for an hour and a half. It's just, it stacks up and up and up. So I have to say, maybe we need to pump the brakes a little bit in a few areas. Not necessarily neglect your family, but yes, focus on yourself. But maybe we should start small. Maybe we should start with 30 minutes exercise. Yeah. Maybe you just want to aim for 5,000 to 6,000 steps a day to get that fat loss in. Or that additional cardio that you need to get. It doesn't need to be an hour on a treadmill or a crazy bike ride. So balance, I think, is the answer to that.
I read a book recently called The Body Keeps the Score, and you were talking about trauma being stored within. I mean, often, do you have people who come to you and they think they're trying to solve something physical, but in fact, they're putting the weight on, not because they're not doing the exercise, but because there's something deeper going on?
Oftentimes, yeah. And again, it's self-perception.
Yeah.
They think they feel they need to look a certain way or they need to perform to a certain level to be accepted, whether they want to be stronger, whether they're a guy who wants to have bigger muscles, whether they're a female trainee who wants to be a little bit thinner, for example, because of the pressures of society. So it's really horses for courses. There's so many different factors involved and so many different types of people. But yeah, it's just case by case basis, I think.
And you were nodding there, Dr. T, particularly when I talked about, the body keeping the score.
I love that book.
Yeah. I mean, it starts off quite dark.
It is. It's heavy. It's a heavy read.
It's not an easy read, but I found it, I was close to tears reading it halfway through. But how do you work with your clients then? And again, coming back to that actually it's something that's been internalized over perhaps sometimes a long period of time. How do you bring that to the surface, and then how do you begin to work through that with your clients?
Well, I would have to say in one word, embodiment. So really connecting back to your body. So essentially when it comes to trauma, what happens is that a lot of our sensory stimuli that we've taken in during that trauma gets stored in the body. And when we experience trauma, we disconnect from our body. So we tend to just live up here, intellectualizing everything. And we forget that the body is holding on to so much.
Yeah.
So embodiment is very important, where we kind of go back to the body. Like, how are you feeling? Like, what is happening internally? So when you're feeling, let's say, abandoned, or you're feeling rejected, or you're feeling isolated or lonely, where do you feel it in your body? And how are you experiencing that? So a sense of embodiment is very important, and learning how to release that tension from your body is key. And then after that, we work on emotional regulation. So really it's about, I can't tell you how many people I meet that are so disconnected from their body. And it's not just from any kind of traumatic experiences, but also just because life is so fast paced and everybody's working on this urgency culture. Like there's something that has to happen right now before, And so essentially we're forgetting that the body actually requires some form of attention. So definitely bringing people back into their body is very important.
Now, I could talk to you guys about this all day, but there is a boxing coach who wants to get in that ring, and I'm not standing in his way. Before we go, though, Tony, perhaps give us 3 of your either top tips, and let's bring it full circle as well, like the things that community, like I know that's super important to you at Optimal Fitness. So the things that community have given to you and how you know that's shown up in your life to help you.
I think it's that sense of identity first and foremost, belonging to a tribe or a pack of people who enjoy the same things as you. You know, it's. I think that's important. I used to compete in powerlifting and weightlifting, and that was a great community. It was a kind of very accepting. Everybody was very kind of pat on the back, no matter how badly or how well you do in competition. It was always the fact that you tried. Was a big thing. So having a community that's accessible and not elite and not not considering everyone, I think is important. That's why we have such a welcoming atmosphere here. And that's why the feedback from a lot of our existing members is that they feel welcome and they can come here and enjoy their time here without, feeling insecure about how they look or how they perform or potentially, what they don't have. They're not having to compare themselves to others, which is a big thing on social media. So yeah, that sense of community and belonging. You want 3, you said?
I think you've done well there.
Is that enough?
Yeah. And I can see the boxing coach over there. And I'm going to give the mic drop moment, even if it is on mic stand, to you, Dr. T. 3 practices that we can bring into our lives, or 3 things that you think are important as starting points for people to go, to get on that path to be better.
So I would say definitely breathing exercises, grounding techniques, any kind of meditation. You don't have to really focus on yoga, but breathing exercises and meditation. Definitely a proper sleep hygiene and proper nutrition as well as exercise. So that's 4.
I'm gonna keep him for a second. It feels that we don't talk enough about sleep as well, because we talk a lot about physical health and we're beginning to talk about mental health. How often do you hear companies who will have sleep policies? So I'm really interested to see that you're bringing sleep into that kind of magic 3 equations. It's so important. You said the same as well, Tony, because how can we recover if we haven't got a good sleep hygiene? Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on the Mental Space. Could talk to you for hours. If you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have, then please remember that you can come down to Optimal Fitness. Check it out. If you are struggling, please remember we've got Dr. T here who can help, and also please subscribe either on the podcast platform of choice or on YouTube. Guys, thanks very much. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you.